Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1251 of the Juicebox Podcast. So today we're going to talk to Ben. He's a 30-year-old systems administrator who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes about 2 years ago. Ben has a number of different issues that we're going to speak about today: bipolar disorder, addiction, multiple personalities, and a little bit more. This one maybe didn't have to be After Dark, but Ben cursed a lot in it, and so the intent is there even though the curses aren't. And for that reason, today's another episode of the After Dark series from the Juicebox Podcast. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. All right, for those of you listening on the day that the episode came out, it's Friday. It's a perfect time to sit back with your phone and take the survey at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I know you're at your desk pretending to work. Go help out with type 1 diabetes research. They're looking for U.S. residents who have type 1 diabetes or are the caregivers of someone with type 1. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. And then go become a member of the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by US Med, usmed.com/juicebox, or call 888-721-1514. US Med is where my daughter gets her diabetes supplies from, and you could too. Use the link or number to get your free benefit check and get started today with US Med. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing together people who are redefining what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Mark. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 28. He's 47 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and check out the Medtronic Champion hashtag on social media. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
Hey, Scott, I'm Ben Jensen. I'm a 30-year-old systems administrator living in Nampa, Idaho. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 28.
2 years ago.
Yes.
All right. Any other autoimmune or diabetes in your family?
Autoimmune issues up the wazoo. I come from a family of females. Just about every single one of them has a thyroid problem. I couldn't tell you whether it was hypo or hyper, but yes, tons of it up my mom's side of the family. Okay,
on your mom's side. You don't have hypothyroidism?
No, but I'm actually getting tested. My nurse practitioner, she just ordered a full thyroid panel.
Interesting.
I'm getting the labs drawn for that tomorrow. Interestingly enough, I just watched a TikTok video where bipolar type 1 can be confused with a thyroid issue. So that's why she ordered the test.
So you had a little bit of an audio issue in the beginning, Ben. So the first time you introduced yourself, you told people you had bipolar, but you didn't the second time. So how long have you had that diagnosis?
Since July of this year. And it is currently November 13th.
Ben, prior to that, any psychological issues at all?
No, I was a normal guy. I kicked ass at my job. I did have addictions to antihistamines at certain points. That turned into binge drinking, but I was a functioning addict of sorts at work. I worked for the state police. I was one of the lead infrastructure engineers. So I was there for 3 years.
I don't know how to abuse antihistamines. Can you tell me?
The one that I abused was diphenhydramine. It's commonly known as Benadryl. And it's in a class of drug called a dissociative. And I also believe that I have dissociative identity disorder. That's formerly known as multiple personality disorder.
Okay.
When I would pop the antihistamines, I would do them at such large doses, I would hear voices in my head.
Really?
And yes, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. They were more like whispers that, I knew were people, but I couldn't quite understand, if that makes sense.
So while you don't have a diagnosis before the bipolar 6 months ago or so, you were having issues that were concerning, but you thought they were related or they were related to the abuse. Is that possible?
So I didn't mention any abuse, Scott.
Oh, sorry. I meant abusing the antihistamines, but did I find something by mistake, Ben?
Oh, you might have, Scott.
Okay.
Freudian slip there. We'll get to that later, I guess.
Okay. Do you think, like in hindsight, do you think that's mental health, or do you think it was actually the impact from the antihistamine?
I think it was me coping. I found something that helped me cope.
Okay.
And it was antihistamines. I knew that there was something wrong in my head.
Gotcha.
I believe I've had bipolar my entire life. I've had DID my entire life. I've only become aware of these things since July 20th of this year.
How did it manifest earlier in your life, and how was it written off?
Looking back on my earlier life, I believe the first personality that was born was my gamer personality. I was super manic into games my entire life. Everything about them, like Duck Hunt. I was on an old Flash game website back in the day called pawngame.com. I was super invested in the community. It just meant the world to me. World of Warcraft, I probably have, 20,000 hours played in it. I probably had 7,000 hours in Dota 2. That was my first addiction. It was gaming.
Actually, the most stunning thing you've said so far is that Duck Hunt is still something a person who's 30 years old would have played. I didn't
Hell yes, dude. It was on. I had to go downstairs in the basement. It was dark. I had to blow in the cartridge and everything.
I was going to say that's an old Nintendo game, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, my stepdad had it. SNES.
My goodness. Yeah, that shocked me. The rest of this is making sense. But the Duck Hunt exists and people still use it. I was like, get out of here. So you hyper focused on those video games.
I did.
Okay.
They were my life. Yep.
And what did that do for you? Like, a lot of this is, I think, in hindsight, I imagine these questions. But
I was a good student as well. I was in advanced placement classes during all of this. I had friends who were on the basketball team. I played soccer for like a prestigious club.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great upbringing. But at the same time, there was, childhood abuse that I had recognized that I'd been living with my entire life. That was the cause of why I was doing all these things.
What did the abuse look like?
Viewers, Scott and I were talking before, and we were talking about how our day went. And I told Scott that my therapist fired me today. And he told me to save it for the air. So my therapist just fired me. Scott, where was I going with this?
I asked what about the abuse.
Oh, yeah, about the abuse. Okay, so there's a scene in my head, my first memory as a child. This is my first memory. I don't know if you know what your first memory that you have on Earth, Scott. But my first memory is me in a room standing next to my brother, who is now, I know, he's been diagnosed with highly functioning autism. I didn't know that until I was 30.
Okay.
So he has his own demons. It was me and him standing, looking outside a window, watching my dad drag my mom down the front sidewalk of our house down to the street.
Oh, my God.
That's the only traumatic memory I have. I love both my mom and my dad. Mom is also related to my mental break. She's been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease, and she's very quickly losing her ability to speak.
How old is she?
57.
Have you ever asked either of your parents about that memory?
I talked with my mom about it when I was a kid, maybe 6 or 7.
Did she tell you it happened?
She said it happened. I talked to her about it again maybe a year or two ago. I was very drunk at the time. She said it was a bad night.
Yeah. Let's hope that wasn't reminiscent of a good night for her.
Yep.
It was a one-time thing, and you were just unlucky enough to see it?
I never had the courage to go that deep enough with it with my mom,
Okay.
Scott.
Yeah.
My mom lost her mind the same time I did. And by the time I came to it, she's not capable of having these kinds of conversations
Any longer.
She's capable of telling you what she wants for breakfast.
Are your parents together still?
They're divorced.
Yeah, I thought maybe. Do you see your father at all? If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information. I used to hate ordering my daughter's diabetes supplies. I never had a good experience, and it was frustrating. But it hasn't been that way for a while, actually for about 3 years now, because that's how long we've been using US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. They have served over 1 million people with diabetes since 1996, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. Find out why US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau at usmed.com/juicebox, or just call them at 888-721-1514. Get started right now, and you'll be getting your supplies the same way we do.
I do.
Have you spoken to him about any of this?
I texted him all this. I don't know if he read his text messages, but
He hasn't returned?
I basically confirmed the story with my brother that he saw he said he saw some.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he said. And I said, I told my dad my first memory, and then I let him know I'm coming on your podcast. So I called him for his birthday. His birthday was November 9th. He didn't answer the phone. He said he was in a meeting. So that's on him.
Okay, gotcha. How old is he? Is he about your mom's age?
No, a little older. Not entirely sure. He might be close to 60. A little over.
Does he have any problems with alcohol?
Not that I know of, no. At the time, I've heard stories that maybe he did. I know I'm a dick when I'm drunk, Scott. Drinking Ben he's no fun guy to be around sometimes.
Drinking Ben is not a fun Ben?
Well, he can be fun. If you get like 3 in him, once you get, 12, he becomes a different guy.
Yeah. You talked about binge drinking. You moved to that after the Benadryl?
I did.
Benadryl wasn't working anymore?
Was looking for something different. So eventually, what the Benadryl manifested into was a feeling of just impending doom. That's what I would feel when I would do these large doses of it. I'm talking, I would be popping bottles of this, Scott, on a daily basis until my hand shook.
Just drinking. Is this what the kids call sizzle? What am I doing? I have it wrong. Am I right or no?
I don't think I'm a kid anymore, Scott. I'm out of the loop just as much as you are.
You think you're more out of the loop than I am? Okay. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm up to the point in my life now where I'm asking waitresses how old I look. So I'm like, hey, we don't know each other. You've already gotten your tip. Just real quick, how old do I look?
Do you do this in front of your wife, Scott?
I do, because I've held on to my dark hair. And so I think this might be the only thing saving me. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to stop going to people who are expecting tips from me and start asking just random strangers on the street, maybe. I'm trying to assess my, I don't know how, I guess how old I look. Anyway, I don't think that's a thing that young people do. I don't think young people are like, hey, I don't look 30, do I? I've had a number of these conversations. People with bipolar, like those kinds of issues. You know, I have my own thoughts that are rooted in absolutely no science, but seems like people who deal with inflammation issues seem to run into bipolar issues as well. Not with a lot of frequency, but I've always been kind of stunned by how many people, when you ask them, is there autoimmune in your family? What else is going on? And they eventually get to a bipolar uncle. You know, it doesn't take too long in a lot of these conversations. So especially now your mom has Alzheimer's, which I believe people call diabetes type something, right? Aren't they saying...
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Does your mom have type 2 by any chance?
Yeah, she does. So when she was down, the last time I saw her, I slapped a G7 on her. We diagnosed it.
The exact connection between Alzheimer's and type 2 diabetes is still in debate. However, poorly controlled blood sugar may increase the risk of developing Alzheimer's. The relationship is so strong that some have called Alzheimer's the diabetes of the brain or type 3 diabetes. That's from the NIH just like 3 years ago. My point overall is, you know, inflammation and things go wonky. I have to be honest with you, before you gave me your backstory about how long you think you've been struggling, like through your entire life, part of me was just thought like, gosh, maybe you've had a big shift because of your thyroid. Maybe you're going to find out your thyroid, your TSH is like 8 or 9 or something crazy high. And that because thyroid is really one of the ways that one of the symptoms of thyroid can be like really strange behavior and like aggressiveness and agitation, that kind of stuff. And I thought, I wonder if that doesn't look like bipolar. But then you said this has been going on for most of your life. And I kind of let that thought go after that.
Okay. I mean, I'm excited just to get the blood work done, just to see where I'm at, knowing that, you know, every female in my family has a problem. So,
well, I think just making everything as well regulated as possible only can be good news for you. So, yeah, it's definitely worth doing. You've never had it done before?
No, I guess not.
Yeah, you've only had diabetes for 2 years too. How do you make out with the type 1? Is it something like in the middle of all this? Are you like doing well with it, or are you struggling with that as well?
After I was diagnosed, I went from a 12A1C to a 4.6 in 3 months.
Oh.
And I maintained that for 2 years until my mental break. I'm at a 6.0 right now.
What were you doing to get in the 4s?
I was Scott Benner, and I fucking just was bold with insulin, dude. And I paid super strict attention to it.
Okay.
I was super good at it. I was manic about diabetes.
Okay. Oh, so you kind of you took that energy and you focused it at the type 1.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it worked till it didn't, I guess.
It fucking did. I was good at it.
Did you know while you were doing that, while you had this incredible uber focus about diabetes and you had your A1C in the 4s, is there any part of you that says, I have a mental instability and I'm just using it for good right now? Or did you just think, wow, I'm doing amazing at this?
Well, no, I knew my life was and I would say it out loud all the time involuntarily. I would say things like I hated my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to realize that it wasn't me saying it. It was the other personalities inside of me. It was Dr. Ben. It was philosopher Ben. They were saying that they hated the current state of things. So I was always aware that I was not happy.
Okay.
I didn't see a way out.
The DID, can you give more context to what that is for people?
It's a dissociative disorder where there's parts, I guess I'll try to describe my experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
There are thoughts in my head that I recognize that are not my own. And there are times in my life where I know something else is dictating what I'm doing with my body. Be that sending a text message or navigating me through a crowded room to read something. Very important to me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Everything just seems perfectly orchestrated. too well orchestrated that I know that it's not me actually doing it. It's something else. The main personality primarily associated with controlling my body, I believe, is Mr. Congeniality. He's my tech visionary. In addition to having all of these mental illnesses, I believe that I'm becoming the visionary behind artificial general intelligence and faster than light speed travel.
Are these different personalities all together at the same time, or do they get their moment in the sun?
They definitely get their moment in the sun. Like Philosopher Ben, he loves saying why in work chat, or maybe sending a quirky text while he's taking a
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Congeniality loves inspiring people to get excited about technology.
Did you just say a second ago that there's a personality inside of you that believes it's the driving force behind AI technology?
Yeah, that's Mr. C.
And you can sit with me right now and speak about that other personality as if it's another person.
Correct.
But if the dice landed in a certain way today and he was the one who got on the call, would he talk about Ben?
I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Are you not aware of when other, like you right now that I'm speaking to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call you Ben. I'm trying to understand how this works. Are there long swaths of time or even hours or minutes where someone else is in control and then like a movie, you come back and you don't remember what happened?
I have selective amnesia sometimes. Most of the time, it's like I'm viewing a movie.
Okay.
And I'm feeling Mr. C's feelings. I'm experiencing his thoughts through the text messages that he's sending.
I see.
He's only had a few phone calls. He hasn't spoken to many people yet.
Mm. And it's not possible that you are actually working on AI on a computer somewhere and you don't know it?
That would be bitchin', but I don't think that's happening.
Think that's actually happening. It's just it's just this belief, this certain part of your mind believes that that's happening sometimes when that part of your yeah.
So he's convinced me. Mr. C has convinced Ben Jensen that this is happening, and I'm along for the ride.
And so you had the wherewithal to say, everything's upside down. I'm going to go get a therapist. I need to figure something out. But I don't understand. I'm so afraid that you're going to tell me your therapist fired you because you're coming on a podcast.
The main reason he fired me was because he didn't like video calls.
He didn't like video call? Like you wanted to see him over like Zoom, but he wanted to see you in person?
Correct. Yeah. I'm a really busy guy. Like I did not want to dedicate like freaking 4 hours a day. Like, you know, it'd be like 4 hours for an appointment on Monday morning, dude, with the traffic here.
Because you're driving somewhere and then you got to get there. And
in rush hour.
Right,
yeah.
right. He didn't want to do it over video.
Yeah.
And are you comfortable that that's the real reason? Or is it possible that one of you, I don't know how to talk about this, but one of your personalities did something that was so egregious that he wanted to get away from you and made up an excuse to get away from you?
He also was an addiction therapist, and he wanted me to check myself into a 12-step program.
And you're thinking your mental health needs to be addressed because you're drinking still?
No, I'm not drinking.
You're not?
I haven't drank since I started smoking marijuana, Scott.
Okay, so you're what they call California sober?
I guess.
Okay. I learned so much on this podcast. It's fantastic. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to tell you that smoking too much weed with bipolar is not a good idea. Is that not right?
That is right. Mm-hmm. But my life is going great right now, Scott.
What is your level of expectation for your life, Ben?
I want to have a fulfilling day at work where I build technology that helps people. Mm-hmm. And then I want to come home and watch some bitchin' ass TV with my wife and pet my dog.
I can't believe it took you 23 minutes to tell me you're married. Okay, how long have you been married?
3 years this October.
So this lucky girl got you 1 year before your meltdown, 1 year before your diabetes.
Yeah. So we got married, and we got married during COVID in like 2020. Our plan was to go to Japan. That ended up not happening. And then we buy a house. And then the month after we move into the house, I immediately get diagnosed with diabetes. And yeah, she didn't immediately leave.
Oh,
She's the best.
yeah, that was her mistake, Ben. But okay, so so she hung around. I don't imagine that many people think it's appropriate or possible to have a conversation like this and joke around at the same time, but I disagree. She hangs around, but then it's not much longer before, like, let me ask you this. The person you married, does that person know you're having any issues with mental health?
Oh, yeah. She's completely aware, and she's the most nurturing soul in the world. She's the reason I'm alive.
Okay. Does she have any mental health issues?
I don't think she does. She is solid as a rock. I cannot wait to have a child with this woman because all of my bad genes will just be eaten by her rock solid genes.
All right, Ben, I don't know if that's how that works. We might want to like hold off on that idea until we have some more answers. But I hear what you're saying. She's legit person.
Yes.
And very supportive and helpful. So how does she help you? Like, is she the person you go to and you say, I think I'm having a breakdown here and here's what's happening?
Yeah, she's my best friend.
Yeah. And how does she help you in that moment?
She let me freak out. She let me spend some money. She let me try to organize the best World of Warcraft raid of all time. And
the manic part work for a while?
Yeah, she let me have my fun.
Right now, we're going to hear from a member of the Medtronic Champion community. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. And this is Mark.
I used injections for about 6 months, and then my endocrinologist in the Navy recommended a pump.
How long had you been in the Navy?
8 years up to that point.
I've interviewed a number of people who have been diagnosed during service, and most of the time they're discharged. What happened to you?
I was medically discharged. 6 months after my diagnosis.
Was it your goal to stay in the Navy for your whole life, your career?
It was. Yeah. In fact, I think a few months before my diagnosis, my wife and I had that discussion about, staying in for the long term. And, we'd made the decision despite all the hardships and time away from home. That was what we loved the most. Was the Navy a lifetime goal of yours? Lifetime goal. I mean, as my earliest childhood memories were flying, being a fighter pilot.
How did your diagnosis impact your lifelong dream?
It was devastating. Everything I had done in life, everything I'd worked up to that point was just taken away in an instant. I was not prepared for that at all.
What does your support system look like?
Friends, your family, caregivers, for me, the Medtronic Champions community, all those resources that are out there help guide the way, but then help keep abreast on, the new things that are coming down the pipe and to give you hope for eventually that we can find a cure.
You can hear more stories from Medtronic Champions and share your own story at medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox.
And then what I did to initially get myself checked into the hospital the first time was I called my friend and I tried to recruit him for this tech company to build AI. It was Mr. Congeniality's first phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that phone call, my friend told me I needed to go to the emergency room. So that's when I told my wife what my friend Daniel said. And my friend Daniel, his mom had bipolar. So he knew quite a bit about it.
Yeah, he recognized it.
Yeah, he recognized it immediately. So he was the good friend that had me check myself in.
Well, that's lovely. Good for him.
Yeah.
It's nice of you to. It's nice that you were able to listen to him and that he was willing to speak up and say something.
Yeah, he recognized it immediately.
Do you remember that phone call?
I do.
What do you think you said that made him go, uh-oh?
It was my intonation. It was how intense I was. It was the things I was saying. I want to whip out my and piss in the insulin river, Scott. That's my inspiration for space travel.
That's what you said? And he went, uh-oh.
Yep.
Yeah, I recognize this from my mom. And so my mom once said she was going to urinate into a stream to change how coupons were used. And I thought, I have heard this before. Okay, so he tells you turn right to your wife and say, my friend Daniel just told me I don't seem well.
Yeah, I need to go to the ER immediately.
She didn't know you didn't sound well?
She was outside when the phone call was happening.
Okay.
So she did not hear it. And I lost it. I screamed and she heard the scream.
Was he the first person that ever intimated to you that you have a mental health issue?
Yes.
Is upsetting or relieving?
Relieving that I hit it so well, I guess.
Oh, I see. You're like, I can't believe he's the first person to figure this out.
I mean, I didn't know there was, at the time, I didn't know any of this was going on. Mm-hmm. I wish somebody else would have said something.
I hear you.
He was the first guy that said something,
Yeah, no, I understand. I jump to your brother for a second. Highly functioning autism?
Yeah.
Okay. Does he have any other issues, or is that...
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Do you speak?
Yeah, he can speak. He holds down a job. He's a sous chef at a good country club.
I'm sorry. I meant, do you two speak? Do you have a relationship?
Yeah, we have a relationship.
Okay. And you told him about this?
Oh, he knows about Mr. Congeniality and like my plans and my companies and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. He was probably pissed when he realized you guys bought a business together and you don't even remember it. He's probably like,
that one flew over my head, Scott.
Wait. We're not packing stardust into diamonds? I thought we were going to be rich. But I have the recipe right here. It's stardust, insulin, urine, pressure. Like, you told me this was going to work. So are you on any medications for any of this?
Yeah, I'm on like half of the pharmacy, bud. Where do you want to start?
Well, who's prescribing it?
My psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Okay. What did you start with? Did it help? What did you move to? What's been happening with all that?
They started me on Seroquel, which hits me like a brick house, Scott. And it'll just knock me out. And that's about all it does. It didn't really do anything to help the manic behavior.
Okay.
That was at the first psychiatric hospital where I feel like they mismanaged my diabetes. Mm-hmm. For the first hospital stay, they had me only on Seroquel, and they only got the dosage up to 200 milligrams. They were worried about pushing it higher because of type 1. It really fucks up my appetite.
Gotcha.
Too.
Hey, Ben, this is going to seem like a weird detour for a second, but, let me do this. I hear this happens a lot, and I'm just going to, this is my opportunity to make a stand in the world. You've misused the term brick shit house. Brick shit house specifically is speaking about a woman whose bust to waist to hip ratio is a certain way. So if you're chesty, hippie with a thin waist, you may be built like a brick shit house. I know this is not important to the conversation, but I just felt weird that you'd be going through life not knowing that. So
no, it's interesting. I'm going to type it into Google a little later and get a better.
You check me if you want, Ben, but trust me. I grew up around a person who used that phrase a lot. It's not one of my parents, in case somebody's wondering. And that is definitely what that means. I can't believe I was like, we can't let this go. An article built more robustly than its function requires implies an element of indestructibility. Yeah, that's not how I heard it. Hold on a second. Wow, isn't that interesting? Well, I have it here. A voluptuous woman with large round buttocks and bust. Yeah, that's how I knew it. Okay, that's that. All right, we're moving on now, Ben. You start with this medication that hits you really hard and makes you tired, but doesn't do anything other than that. They add something else after that?
No, my wife had to break me out of the psych ward because they were mismanaging my diabetes.
Okay.
So that happened, and then get out, and then I start manically texting my old supervisor at the state police because I didn't really trust anybody in the government. I was very paranoid at this point, Scott. And I was like trying to get him to send me a cop car that could take me to a hospital that was going to treat me better.
Okay.
So he ended up calling in a wellness check, and then that wellness check brought me to the second hospital.
Yeah, is that when you lost your job too, or no? Or did that? No?
No, my wife is the most nurturing soul in the world. Through this entire time, she did all the necessary paperwork to get me filed with short-term disability. I was receiving my full paycheck.
Are you back at that job now?
I am now. Yes, I've been back since October 16th.
Wow, congratulations. That's a lot to get through to get back to that place.
And I'm up for a promotion, Scott, first of the year.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as you know, unless somebody in your head's just telling you that and it's not really happening.
That would be unfortunate. But that's the reality I live in, I guess.
Ben goes into the office one day. He goes, "My check looks exactly the same as last month. I don't understand. I'm the grand poobah now. Why am I not being paid better?"
The grand poobah. I had a supervisor. His name was. He used to say that.
It's amazing. Also, to the editor, why don't we take out the man's last name just in case?
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, it's a Flintstones reference, I think. You're way too young for that.
No, I watched the Flintstones.
Did you?
Maybe I was too young to understand the Flintstones, but I saw the Flintstones.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the pictures on the screen.
I don't know if Fred was the grand. No, there was. Oh my God, this is a rabbit hole. I don't think he's healthy for you or I, but I think the grand poobah was the guy who ran the club, and it was the water buff. Uh-oh. All right, I'm going to figure this out.
Let's deep dive this, dude.
I assume there's a part of your personality that is just like, yes, let's find out more about this.
This is how I fix problems at work, Scott. I'm a Microsoft consultant. I Google things.
All right. So Fred and Barney belong to like a gentleman's club called the Loyal Order of the Water Buffaloes. And this is actually still from my memory. And then the Grand Poobah was like the person who, like the ranking member of the Loyal Order of the Water Buffaloes. I think that might be that might be where that phrase is from. Oh my God. Do you want to know the Poobah's name? It was Sam Slagheap. That was the character in the cartoon. And
you know what I realized? I don't want to know any of this.
No one does. The Flintstones was the cartoon ripoff of the Honeymooners. Did you know that?
The Honeymooners. I'll have to Google this one as well, Scott.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're pretty young. All right. So let's get back to you. What's life like right now?
Life is amazing. I'm going to work. We're kind of in a holding pattern right now, actually. The wife's FMLA is coming up, and it seems like we're going to have to be moving at some point to help take care of Mom, who has Alzheimer's.
Right.
The wife has volunteered to be her primary caretaker. She's the most nurturing soul in the world, and she actually has experience in dementia care. It's what she did before she became a phlebotomist.
Interesting. So she is not phlebotomizing people right now, which just means drawing their blood. And why is she on FMLA? To help you?
Yes, to help me.
Okay. She's out on FMLA to help you. That's coming up on being done now. And you're thinking maybe she'll leave her job or work at part-time and then sit with your mom?
She's going to go back to work after her FMLA is over.
Okay.
She's currently driving me to work right now and to all my appointments. So I'm not allowed to drive on some of the medication that I'm on.
She's Ubering you.
Yes.
You should make her an Uber driver. I don't want to tell you how to get around tax problems, but make her an Uber driver. You're her only client. And then anyway, there's a way in there to save some money, but it would probably be a lot of work. She's going to go. Are you going to be able to drive again soon?
So the main medication preventing me from driving is Xanax. And I think I have my anxiety to the point where I don't need it during the day. I'm currently only using it to help my sleep. I'm kind of a chronic insomniac.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been helping me on nights where I get up after, sleeping for 3 hours and I can't get back to sleep. Okay. One of those will just knock me out. So as long as I'm not on it during the day, I should be able to drive myself. But I also have accommodations I have all the paperwork submitted for work to exempt me from driving in case. So I can be 100% remote if I want to be.
I see. I understand. Do you deal with the multiple personalities like on a daily basis, or is that a thing that's not happening right now?
It's something that I try not to pay attention to. It just happens. They get triggered and they pop out.
Okay.
Does
it feel like a part of your personality is just stronger in that moment, or does it literally feel like an exorcist situation where you're in a dark closet and somebody else is controlling you?
No, I feel like I am them.
I see. Okay. That's who you are now. You now have all this energy or ideas or whatever. Can you,
correct.
Do you have it down? Do you know how many there are?
So We have Philosopher Ben, Dr. Ben, Mr. Congeniality, and Gamer Ben.
Do they name themselves or do you name them?
I named them. Mr. Congeniality's natural name was the Schemer because he would just sit there and twirl my vape and then send like 1,000 Discord messages. So he was a pretty creepy guy. So I renamed him to Mr. Congeniality after one of my favorite chick flicks.
Okay. With Sandra Bullock.
Yes, of course.
Right. And they, I almost have.
This is how I slayed at the psych ward, Scott. It was nothing but 40-year-old women, and they all loved my favorite movies.
Were you weren't picking these ladies up, were you?
No, but I was just talking to them.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure. I want to be clear. You don't have any weird thoughts about me. You don't hear me in your head or anything like that ever?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
If you do, you please don't tell me. Okay. Just please don't send me a message that says that. I swear to you, Ben, if you ever send me a message that says, I heard you last night and I'm on my way to make the Stardust Diamonds, I'm gonna block you. I just want you to be clear.
All right. I'll keep that in mind. I'll send an internal memo about that.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's interesting, man. How are you so good natured about all of this?
I just have to keep up my end of the bargain, dude. I have to keep going.
Because
I believe in Mr. C. I believe in his vision. I believe that I can be on the team that solves the problem of human consciousness.
What is the problem?
How do you put life into software?
Okay. How do you make it so that something that I'm interacting with on a computer is sentient?
Yes.
And that's important. Why?
To solve complex problems.
For example,
like Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, for example, what is it you're looking for it to solve?
Alzheimer's disease is the big one.
Right.
It's very relevant to me.
Yeah, of course. Grand Plans is part of some mental illness. Is it part of yours?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Did you have thoughts like that when you were younger?
When I was younger, I idolized Steve Jobs. Yeah, I did.
Thought like do big things, change the world, that kind of stuff.
Yep, think different.
Has anybody ever said grandiose delusional disorder to you?
No, you're the first person. Does that shock you?
No, I could, because I'm an idiot. I might be 100% wrong. I might not know anything of what I'm talking about.
All right.
Yeah. I just wondered if it was something that had ever come up that, well, I guess my question is, are you actually doing anything that would impact AI?
Not currently, no. Right now, getting myself mentally fit to even get into the field.
I see. Okay. You don't have this delusion right now that you are currently working towards making AI sentient. You just think it would be a thing you'd like to get involved in.
Correct.
Got it.
And I think I've already identified the people that I want to do it with.
Is Daniel one of them?
Yes.
Is he still returning your calls?
He is. He's one of my best friends.
What a good guy. That's excellent. So have you had that conversation since your diagnosis and getting on some medications and getting back to the part where you're at now? Have you actually spoken to Daniel and said, look, when I'm get myself together, this is what I want to do? And he said, yeah, man, I'm in.
He's not in. Mm-hmm. I'll always be courting Daniel, but he's down with me following my own dreams.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. How do you manage your diabetes with all this going on?
I've been doing a pretty job at it with the 6A1C, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is due to medication. Seroquel does make me hungry. Part of that is just binge eating. Part of it is also just not hyper focusing on it, which I think is probably healthy for me to a point.
Oh, for sure.
You know, seeing that 6A1C yesterday, I do want to get.
You'd like to see it in the 5s. Are you seeing spikes after meals? What do you think caused the rise in your A1C?
So after my experience at the first hospital, I'm just like super sketched to have a bunch of insulin in my system at night. So I've been just kind of binging at night and not dosing properly for it.
Eating later at night, not covering it with insulin, making your blood sugar higher, bringing up your A1C.
Yeah.
And in the hospital, they gave you too much. Did you have a seizure?
No, but I had to keep shoveling in food at a time where I didn't want to eat. It was very distressing. I stayed up for 5 days straight in that first hospital.
Jeez. On purpose?
Yeah.
Or was it just part of the manic thing? Or were you trying not to like go to sleep?
No, it was definitely related to the mania, but it was also motivated by fear. I thought that I was going to go low. And the blood sugar logs prove it.
Yeah, they don't. It's, a number of people, no over exaggeration, a number of people have come on the podcast and talked about having children with type 1 who have needed institutionalizing of a number of different kinds, and how hard it is to get an institution that will take responsibility for diabetes even.
Yeah, it's the last thing they want to take care of, man.
Yeah, maybe you understand, but when you need the care, you need the care. So yeah, it's hard to accept that they're just like, diabetes, no thank you, you can't come here. But I mean, at least you found a place to take you. But how long were you there before your wife sprung you?
It was only like 5 days.
Did it help at all?
That first place did not help me at all.
Okay.
I met some good people, but like I loved the people at the psych ward. There's a couple of nurses I really related to as well. One reminded me of my grandmother, but no, I don't have many good memories from the first psych ward.
Okay. So the second thing you tried was more valuable, or was that just the nurse practitioner that you're seeing now?
So I went to the hospital again. So after I got sprung out, I was manically texting my boss, and then I checked myself in the ER again, and they got me into a local hospital.
I'm sorry, that's right. Your boss helped you with the wellness check, and then that got you to the thing. Okay, yep. And that got you where you are now.
Which I have on video, by the way, if you want to watch, Scott.
Wait, you have, first of all, I do not want to see, but what do you have on video?
The wellness check.
You have were you videoing them when they were there?
No, they have their dash cam on.
Oh. Have you watched it?
Yes.
Do you look out of your mind?
Yes.
Was it surprising to you to see yourself that way?
Yes. There's some footage at the hospital is very shocking to watch.
What? How so? Were you trying to fly?
It's just me screaming at this guy, talking about like saying dicks every three words.
Saying dicks.
It was terrible.
Dicks. You didn't ask him to be part of the AI contingent?
No, I'm not sure that entered into the equation. I was trying to get him over to a barbecue at my house, actually.
Wait a minute. You were yelling. First of all, you can't call a guy a dick and then expect him to go to a barbecue with you. But so you were trying to get him to come to a barbecue?
Yeah, I was throwing a huge party because I discovered artificial intelligence. I wanted him to come to my house that Saturday.
Oh, wow. Do you think that's what you'd actually do? First of all, I don't want to say this. It might break your heart. They're already working on AI. You're not going to be discovering anything. But you were telling him that you broke the code on this sentient being, and a barbecue is how you're going to see. Now you've got me stuck. We don't want to go out to a nice steak, go to a restaurant, have a steak, something like that. It's going to be a barbecue.
It was going to be a Twitch stream. I was going to stream it on Twitch. It had to be at my house where I had internet.
That's when you knew you were out of your mind.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, like I'm thinking of all this while they're driving me to the hospital. So clearly none of it was going to happen, right?
So you were actually trying to come up with a way to get him to go, like, so even though you kind of gave yourself over to the process, immediately you're trying to get out of it.
Well, I'm sitting there just the guy.
Okay. And that's his life.
Yeah.
And you feel bad now looking back at it.
Yes.
Well, he chose the job, but yeah, you know what I mean? It's nice.
I think he had a good time. There were some good moments in that video.
You think you look back, you see him having fun a little bit?
There were, dude. There were some giggles. We had some laughs.
Would you be charcoaling my burger or gas, or how do you cook at the barbecue?
For burgers, definitely gas, but for the steaks, 100% charcoal.
You don't smoke though, just the charcoal.
So we smoke on a Traeger, and not very well, mind you. We haven't gotten the pork butt quite right.
No, it's about time, man. Low and slow. Low temperatures, long time. That's what takes care of it. The seasonings here or there. Just, it's not, you don't have to put a lot on a pork butt to season it. Have you tried? Why don't you just go, God, what's his name? Aaron. He's got a video online about smoking a pork butt. I'll think of it later and tell you. Well, how'd you find the podcast?
I found you in the hospital when I got diagnosed.
With type 1?
Yep.
Okay. So you're just digging around like you do, like Googling, trying to figure out how do I help myself. You find a podcast, you start listening to it. You enjoy it, or it just has good information and you think I'll just this is where I'll get my good information from.
Oh no, I loved the podcast. I love the After Dark series, all the tips. I listened to many episodes.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, like I think the episode that you did with Jonathan, I listened to that before I had bipolar, and I still think it's one of your best episodes.
It was good, wasn't it? I haven't heard from Jonathan in a while.
Something special happened in that episode.
Yeah, every once in a while he sends me a message and just tells me he's okay, but then he won't respond. So
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. Is that weird to look back? You were listening to somebody who had bipolar. You probably had it and didn't know it.
It is weird, yeah.
I can imagine. Like when you think back on it now, does it make you feel any certain way?
I'll have to maybe re-listen to the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it definitely makes sense that I remembered the episode. Like it stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like when I got the diagnosis, I remembered Jonathan.
Well, when you were listening, you didn't think, I recognize this in myself?
No, I didn't at all. I loved his story.
Yeah.
And I loved how you got it out of him.
Thank you. It was hard, if I remember correctly. He did
an amazing job.
Thank you. He was quiet. You have a ton of energy today. I don't really need to do a whole lot, Ben. So you're making this easy on me. I appreciate that, by the way, especially on a Monday. Although you came at me pretty manically online. Do you know that?
I did?
You were very it was friendly, but you were aggressive friendly. Like, I am going to be on the podcast. I have this going on. I want to be on the podcast. And I was like, all right. And then I had this, normally you would have gotten a link that you would have found availability sometime in August of next year in 2024. And instead I sent you the VIP link because I wasn't sure how long you were going to have that energy. So I wanted to get you on fast.
Oh, wow. Well, I really appreciate it.
No, that's cool. I was managing you. I'm being honest with you. I was managing you because I wasn't sure how long this part would last for you. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So I just have enough experience with this to know that if I hit you at the wrong time, then you're going to cancel or reschedule or not show up or something like that. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you got your medications in a good spot. Maybe you'll ride this for ever and ever, which would be amazing.
I mean, I feel like my meds are perfect, so I'm just ready to kill it, dude.
Yeah, no, I actually think that because you're on here talking about what you're specifically talking about, the conversation has that flavor. I also believe that you could have come on here and said hey, Scott, I want to talk about, I don't know, pre-bolusing. And we could have dug into it and had a conversation. And at no point I would have thought I think Ben might have some mental health issues. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, I could have shown you a different side of me if I wanted to.
It feels like you could. Yeah. That is my point. Whereas there are some people I've had on who I don't think could have hidden it with a tarp and, I don't know. It just, sometimes I think it's not as hideable as it is other times.
I let all my coworkers know how bad nuts I am, and they still love me.
How did you let them know?
Each one had their own individual way. It's probably too cute to describe.
Wait, just give me one of them. What do you mean too cute?
I'd have to log in my work computer.
You can't remember this all? Oh, you want to read me something?
Yes, I would have to read you a message.
You don't have to do that. It's okay.
Basically, there's a network admin at work who craves a Padawan. Daniel is my Padawan at work.
Okay.
He's also one of my best friends. And there's a network guy at my job that craves that relationship. And I identified at the company somebody that could be his Padawan. And I picked up, so Mr. C picked up on a word that this man said. The word was subnet. And I bounced on that like I was in oh, dude. I just jumped on him. And I got him hyped up and he fixed the printer ticket. And then all he wanted was a shot to be on Cameron's team. And I think I gave it to him, man. I put his name in Cameron's mind and he closed the ticket for me. Uh-huh. And then he gave me at work, we have these things called impressions. It's like when you've touched somebody's day, they'll give you an impression and be like, oh, Scott, he helped me with this today. Thank you, Scott. And then everybody sees it. And there's a big leaderboard, dude. And before I went on short-term disability, I was at the top of that leaderboard, something I was very proud of because I was always farming these impressions from people.
Mm-hmm. Were you trying to get them, or do you think you were just helpful and they just wanted to give them to you?
Oh, both. I wanted them, but I was also the most helpful guy in the room.
Okay. Because of that energy, you think?
Or I think it is. It's the energy.
Yeah. Right. But you were also kind of hyper-focused on winning the leaderboard?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Very much so.
Is that still a concern for you going back?
What do you mean a concern?
Like, are you going to go back and try to be that person again, or are you just going to let things shake out and be how they're going to be?
Oh, no, I'm still going to be myself. I still want to be at the top of that leaderboard. I still want to be the most helpful guy at the company.
Nice. You get any money for that?
No, but you get your name put in a hat, and every year you might be flown out on an all-expense paid trip vacation.
Oh, so every time somebody went, is it weekly?
No, it's a yearly thing.
But I mean, like, how many names go into the hat at the end of the year?
I'm not really sure. I think it's however many impressions there are.
Oh, I
so
see.
like if I get 30, I get 30 tickets.
Oh, and then they pull one out and whoever wins the trip.
Yeah.
Nice. I would do that. I help a lot of people. How come nobody's sending me on a trip?
Well, you're self-employed. You can send yourself on a trip.
Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying now. I do work by myself, but never mind. I don't know what I meant. I just think I wanted a free trip. I don't even have a point. I was just like, oh, I would like to go away. I never leave this room. You know, I heard somebody say something the other day about health that really was overly simplified and yet struck me hard. He said, sitting is the new smoking. And I thought, then I'm dead because I sit here and make this podcast a lot.
You got to get a standing desk, bro. I've been standing up this whole time.
You're standing?
Yes.
I have a standing desk. I just don't I've never done it before.
Got to use it, man.
So, all right, hold on a second. So I've never done this before.
Find a comfortable height.
Hold on. All right, it's going up. I have a standing desk. I never use it. All right, hold on. It's going up. Ah! Hold on, Daniel.
You were not prepared for this.
I'm sorry I yelled in your ear. All right, so it's getting up pretty high now. Wow, look how high it goes. All right, then I'd have to stand up. Doesn't feel like it's going to be healthy, but okay. So I'm standing up. I got to move my microphone.
You sound like a new man.
Okay. Do I sound the same to you now?
No, you sound better.
Don't f with me, Ben.
I think you do.
Okay, so I am standing. I have my hands behind my back.
Does it feel good?
It doesn't feel any different. It just feels like I'm standing up. I think the problem is, the reason I've never thought to do it is because if during the conversation I want to sit down, then I got to readjust the desk, and you heard all the noise it makes and everything. And I think that would just be not a good idea. That's all. Other than that, do I feel weird? I do feel a little strange. I've never done this before. Standing and talking.
Also, is your mic attached to your desk?
Yeah.
Okay. So I opted for a headset this conversation. So I was not encumbered.
Well, that's a good idea. That's a good idea for a layman, but I'm speaking into a pretty expensive microphone.
I can imagine what's on the other side. I'm a visionary, Scott.
Yeah. Oh, you can imagine it because of your vision?
Yes.
Actually, I wish it was higher. And if I go a little higher, then this thing will fall off. Anyway. God damn it, Ben. All right. I'm going to do the rest of the interview standing up, but this is probably the last time this is ever going to happen. Because now I'm already spreading my legs apart to make my height different. And the thing with my hands behind my back is freaking me out.
I've gotten Scott Benner uncomfortable, folks.
Yes, yeah, I am uncomfortable. Oh, wow. It really does throw me off. It's interesting. Okay. What have we not talked about that we should have?
I think I got everything I wanted to say out.
You did? I'm going to look
I did.
I'm going to look at your notes. Hold on. Stories from the psych ward. Drug and alcohol abuse use, emotional trauma, bipolar diagnosis. All right. We did good. Or well.
Yeah, dude.
Well, right? We did well. We did good is not English, is it?
We did well.
Yeah. Also, I've now figured out that I care about fewer and less in when people as an example, counting something. There are Here, there's 6 pens in front of me. If I take one away, I have fewer pens, not less pens. But I have a bottle of water in front of me, and if I take a drink out of it, I have less water, not fewer water. I'm ultra aware of people using that incorrectly all of a sudden.
Are you sure you don't have a mental illness, Scott?
No, I'm fine, actually. I'm just, I'm over exaggerating things about my life so that I can talk about them on podcasts. I'm just trying to explain them. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't hear any voices. You want to go over the things that don't happen to me, Ben? I like when some people say, what I find, if you want to like really know, is when people want to reach out to me to tell me that I seem like I have ADHD, or Scott, are you sure you don't have autism? Or Scott, are you sure? Like, I think they're just projecting mostly. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was doing right there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I'm just also, I mean, I don't have any of the issues that would go along with those ideas. Like, just be, like people are like, Scott jumps around in the conversation sometimes. I really just follow the conversation. Yours and my conversation would seem to other people to jump around, but that's just me realizing that if I try to put our conversation on a path that I think it would be best on, you're going to struggle with it. So I follow your path. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. And when I talk to like a middle-aged mom from the middle of the country whose life is ultra normal and she's used to telling chronological stories.
You've talked to a hell of a lot of people at this point.
Yeah. Then I follow their path, and I ask questions that keep them on the path that they're comfortable with, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So I don't want to give away too many of the backroom secrets of my incredible success, Ben, but that is one of them right there. Ben, can I say something that I have no business saying?
You're welcome.
I am welcome to say it?
You're welcome.
Okay. I want you to get the blessing of 3 people you trust before you get pregnant.
Okay.
Does that seem fair?
That seems fair.
Okay. You might not be the best arbiter of whether or not that's a good decision or not. And if you bring another person into it, it's a lifelong situation. So if you were my son, which you are not, but ironically, I am old enough to be your father, right? You're 30?
Yes.
If I had a baby when I was 22, it could be you, Ben. Okay. So I would tell you, like, real sincerely, that you need to find a couple of people who you love and trust, who love you, who are as honest as Daniel is with you. And when you go to make this decision, say to them, this is what I'm thinking of doing, and I really want an outside perspective. Because I don't know your wife, and it's fine. She's rock solid. I trust you and your assessment of her. But she might be trying to make you happy too. And I don't know. It would be, you seem like a really sweet person. And I think you would hold it against yourself if anything happening with you impacted a baby or if it was transferred. I think it would be bothersome to you. So I want to make sure that that's not your situation before you do something like that. Is that fair?
That sounds fair to me.
All right. It really is none of my business. And I feel badly saying it, but I'm actually going to apologize. But it still felt like there are times I have these conversations and I want to make sure I say the things I'm thinking. So anyway.
I mean, that's why I came on, dude. I came on to talk to Scott Benner.
You want to get a little bit of my
I didn't come on here to not hear your opinion.
Ben, do you know I'm thinking of starting a second podcast? Yeah, I'm thinking of starting a second podcast where I can put the conversations that don't fit into here. And I've just been told by, this is going to sound pompous, but I've been told by a lot of people that this is their favorite podcast, not their favorite diabetes podcast. Does that make sense?
No, I totally understand. I think the same is true with me. Like I come here for you, not diabetes.
Thank you.
And I come for the conversations that you have with people.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking of starting another podcast that is not contingent on you having diabetes for me to have a conversation with somebody.
I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Can I share the title I'm considering with you?
You can.
Okay. So first of all, there are a lot of podcasts. And because of that, every title you can almost think of has already been soaked up by somebody, or in some situations, multiple times. There are a shortage of words even to use in your titles because people overuse words. Like I said to somebody like, hey, I think I'm going to make a secondary podcast. What should I call it? And they're like, oh, call it Juicebox Uncensored, or like, so words like uncensored, untethered, like stuff like that have been used over and over and over again. Like it would just, you'd get lost. So I was at first on What Matters because it was a thing my kids used to say when they were like, both of my children used the phrase what matters when what they meant was that like you could never kind of tell what they meant. Like it was either like that doesn't matter or why does that matter? But when they were super young, they'd go, what matters? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. We'll do that. But a quick search tells me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 9 podcasts use that phrase in their title. So I was like, oh, I can't do that. So here's what I came up with. I'm going to go with maybe. I'm workshopping it with you right now. Trying to think. It's the best I've got so far. Because
I mean, I like it.
Yeah, it's not great though. You know which one's the best right now? Smartless. It's such a simple, not word that sticks in your head. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do you listen to Smartless podcast? I don't.
No, I don't.
But you're aware of it though.
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not. No.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. It's Jason Bateman. You know Jason Bateman? God, you're so young.
Movie star, right?
Yeah. Him and 2 of his friends who are also famous make this podcast. Anyway, I just think the name is smart. Like Smartless is like, oh, Smartless. It sticks in your head. It's funny. It kind of has a couple of different meanings. Anyway, Trying to Think is from a Three Stooges skit. You know who the Three Stooges are?
I do.
All right. And I think Curly goes, I'm trying to think, but nothing's happening. And I just think that's hilarious. I don't know. I don't know. Like I can't come up with anything. Right now, what's holding me back from doing this is that I can't find a name for it.
That's the worst part about IT is naming things.
Is it really?
Yeah. I think Trying to Think is good because there's kind of a message of always improving behind it. Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what I land on, is that it's like, hey, I want to try to think about this, or I want to try to expand myself on this. I'm trying to think, but it's hard.
Yeah. You know? And what conversations do you envision having? Just anything? Like you'll just talk to anybody?
I think so. I think I'm just going to open the podcast up to anybody who wants to have a conversation about anything and just talk. I am really of the belief that people's stories are interesting and that they don't have to be famous or of note for people to listen to them. I think that the things that are popular are people who you've heard of, right? Like, you know, comedians get very popular. There's a lot of comedians that have podcasts, for example, right? They go on each other's podcasts all the time. They basically make each other famous by like going back and forth on their podcasts. They build their name recognition that way. But I go listen to them and I'm not that interested in what they're saying. And then I talk to somebody like you or Jonathan or just some, you know, I put up an episode today called Celiac Shock. It's called Celiac Shock because I'm interviewing this woman who's got 3 kids. One of them has type 1. The kid's got celiac. And when they go to the doctor says, hey, well, we should test you and your husband too for celiac disease. And that process of bringing him into the doctor's office shows that he is an insane alcoholic. She's unaware of it. And he's got cirrhosis and he's in encroaching on kidney failure, if I'm remembering correctly. And this kid's celiac diagnosis saves this guy's life because they said he was on his way out from the drinking. Like, believe it or not, in his 30s, right? And she's telling this whole story. And I think, I don't care that nobody knows her name. Like, this is interesting and impactful and meaningful to people. And I just think you get better conversations out of people who are just normal people if you know how to talk to them. I think that a lot of people don't interview normal people because their interviewing skills suck and they need a famous person who already knows how to talk when they're being recorded. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
Yeah. So I think you can have these conversations with anybody. And that's what I'm going to try to do. Just pick random people and figure out their stories. Like, you didn't tell me you were abused. That wasn't in your notes. And I don't know that you were going to say it or not, but like, I got to it. And I think I can do that with other stuff as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think you can.
I don't think I'm going to turn like a computer into a sentient being and save everybody, but I'm also more stable than you are, Ben.
That is true. That is definitely true.
Is there a world where this goes backwards? Could you one day be 55 years old and look back as, oh my God, do you remember that time in my 30s when this was happening to me, but I'm just not that, I'm not there anymore. Like I'm more what you might consider normal at this point.
Oh, 100%. I would like to think I have one of the most open minds in the world.
What do you think gets you to that? Is it therapy? Is it medication? Is it health changes? Like, have you changed your diet? Have you gone down like bro science and been like, I'm taking out like butter that's not grass fed, or like, you know, are you doing any of that stuff?
Daniel's recommended meditation, so I'm doing that. I'm also, just trying to read books, generally go on long walks, just things that help me calm down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of going down the self-improvement path right now.
I will say this, when you get your TSH back, would you email it to me?
Sure.
Yeah. If it's out of whack, I'd like to put that in the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because, I mean, my son has hypothyroidism with Hashimoto's, and part of the diagnosis was 6 months before we got the diagnosis, I said to my wife, hey, he's acting really strange. Like his personality was off. And he was just agitated, aggressive for no reason sometimes around, like even in conversationally, you know what I mean? Like you start talking about something, he was like, felt like he was out of his mind for a second. You're like, what's going on, man? And that is something that can happen to a person who's, got like bad thyroid labs. I just want to know if that's part of it. But even just eating clean and like, I don't want to come off as like a hippie, but like addressing like gut health. Like, do you think your gut works well? Do you like the way you digest and eliminate?
Digest and eliminate has been great since I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
The diet can definitely be cleaned up. I've just been binging on sweets lately.
Yeah, maybe get rid of the sugar, see if that doesn't help you, that kind of stuff.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I've gone on lower carb diets before, and I've done them with great success.
So maybe there's more things to do for yourself just from a nutrition standpoint that might be helpful. I'm saying even with your mental health.
Yeah. And that's something that every doctor I talk to emphasizes, is that diabetes affects the mind. That's why they're very careful with my medication. They have this crazy program. I have a doctor just for my pills. That's her only job.
Really?
She has this crazy program that just runs all these calculations and figures out what medication is safe for me based off all these side effects.
That's interesting.
So I'm on a very tailored medication dose for me. And this is kind of where we're at.
Good for you. Oh, I'm glad you're getting that kind of care. That's excellent.
Yeah. She's one of my favorite doctors.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, that's a great idea. I didn't know that people did that. It's a lot to keep track of for the regular practitioner, and you see a bunch of different practitioners. So why not have one person whose responsibility it is?
Yeah, they're called med managers.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Good for you. Oh, good. All right. Well, Ben, I'm going to wish you well, and if we have talked about everything, I appreciate you going over my flight of fancy at the end here about maybe I'll start another podcast.
Yeah, good luck with that, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I seriously, the name thing is the hardest part, which is ridiculous because it doesn't really matter.
Well, see, like, you're big enough. Don't you have guys at this point?
People?
Like advertising guys. Like, you'd be like, hey, you don't have a guy you can just like run a brand name by?
They're all going to do the same thing. They're going to pick words. They're going to pick buzzwords and keywords, and they're just going to like, and you'll melt into everybody else.
You think so?
Dude, I started this podcast, right? 2015, January. When I started it, the words juice box did not appear in podcast titles. And now there's like 9 of them.
You're a trendsetter.
No, it's when you get popular, people knock off the words in your title to try to get some of your juice. It's just, I didn't mean that, but you know what I mean? So like if I type, I have a, I'm not going to tell you what site I use, but when I type just the word juice in to a place where I can track all podcasts, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 returns. I'm one of them. The minute you add a B to juice, there are now 3, 6, 9, 11 returns that all use the word juice box. And they're called the Juice Box Podcast. So mine's Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. When I first started, it was just Juicebox Podcast. I added the Type 1 for search reasons. But there's Juicebox, Juicebox Radio, The Juicebox, Juicebox with a capital J and a capital B podcast. Then there's Juicebox Podcast with no space between box and podcast. There's The Juicebox Podcast, The Juicebox Podcast, one word, Juicebox, a musical pod. That's how many times.
How developed are these podcasts? Like how many episodes?
Let's pick one that I've seen forever. Here's one. The Juicebox Podcast. So just, all they did was add the word the. They have not put out an episode since 2020.
Do you think they're making any money off of that?
No, they're not. The Juicebox Podcast, all one word. So that now this is somebody took the and put it in front of my title. And now these people took the Juicebox Podcast and squished it together to one word. They haven't put up a post since 2021. Doesn't look like they ever had enough to attract an advertiser. Here's a new one. Juicebox Podcast, one word. And this person has put up 4 episodes, but hasn't put one up in 5 months. So that's over already. My goal for this podcast is to help people grow and to also grow myself. I feel the best way to do that is by seeing other people's perspectives. It sounds like a 21-year-old on weed found how to make a podcast. Let's see here. Juicebox.
Yeah, that could have been something I wrote, dude.
Trust me, a lot of these could be. The Juicebox hasn't had an episode since 2020. It just goes on and on. So my goal here of like when I'm picking a new title is I type something in here. Like I told you what matters earlier. I was like, I can't do that. There's like 8 people using it. But trying, just the word trying, that's a big one. Adding think to it, there's nothing there.
And you think the search problem is such a big one that the name is really that important?
No, I think that if I pick a word that everybody else uses, then my idea for my podcast is pedestrian.
You're that attached to just the name.
The name is more of an indication of my idea than anything else. Does that make sense?
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
it seems like you're very fixated on the name, though, in a way I can appreciate.
I don't want to have an idea that everybody else is having. Because then what's the point? Like, why is my podcast popular? Why do you think, Ben?
I think it's because you know how to talk to people.
Probably a big part of it. But that's what makes it good, not what makes it popular. What made it popular was I was first. And I separated myself from other diabetes content by not using the word diabetes in my title. That's why I'm popular. First and unique. I have longevity because I'm good at it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So as I'm trying to consider about putting up another podcast, if I can't figure out a way to be those things, then it won't work. Then why don't I just put those episodes in here.
You're not starting from scratch. You have a platform already.
Oh, not at all. Like and this is the only way I'll tell people about it, by the way, is I'll get on the podcast one day and I'll say, hey guys, I started another podcast. It's not about diabetes. This is the title. You can check it out if you want to. That's all I'm going to do. Because boom growth isn't good for this. For me. If I was famous, then it would be. Then you'd want boom growth. Then you'd want to walk around going like, I don't know, I'm Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer and listen to Two Bears, One Cave because everyone does, and you'd be like, yeah, The Machine. I know that guy. And then you'd go listen. Right. And like that works for that because it's comedy and it's just conversational and comedy and them. They're famous. But I need people who like me to listen to me. Because that's how they tell other people about it. Because I can't just go out and say, I'm Scott, listen to my podcast. I'm not big enough for that. I'll never be big enough for that. So my growth is going to come through word of mouth. Does that make sense?
Well, of course it does.
Yeah, it's the only way it works when you're not famous. When you're famous, you just do it.
That's how I found you on Reddit, was word of mouth. Somebody else recommended you.
I have to say, I always take a moment to say this. I'm very grateful for how Reddit's really supportive of the podcast. And I always really appreciate because I'm not a Reddit person and I don't I don't go there for no reason other than I just don't. But when people come into the private Facebook group, I heard about you on Reddit as one of the major ways that I see people come into the private Facebook group. So yeah, they've always been really good to me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Reddit. Yeah, because you don't want people on Reddit to be angry at you because it goes the wrong way.
Oh, no,
quickly.
Definitely not, dude.
But I sincerely, I always appreciate that. So, all right, Ben. So I don't know if I'll ever make a second podcast or not, but if I do, it'll have a weird name and it'll be different and a little obtuse.
Well, I'm excited for it, dude. I'll listen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to wish you a ton of luck. It sounds like you're on a better path and you got good support around you. Don't let the thing with your mom, it's going to be a lot of pressure and stress, but do your best not to absorb it if you can.
I will. Thank you.
Of course. Hold on for me 1 second. Okay.
Okay.
Mark is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. A huge thanks to US Med for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox podcast. Don't forget, usmed.com/juicebox. This is where we get our diabetes supplies from. You can as well. Use the link or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or call the number, get your free benefits check so that you can start getting your diabetes supplies the way we do from US Med. If you're living with type 1 diabetes, the After Dark collection from the Juicebox podcast is the only place to hear the stories that no one else talks about. From drugs to depression, self-harm, trauma, addiction, and so much more. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up in the menu, and click on After Dark. There you'll see a full list of all of the After Dark episodes. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.